Welcome back, everybody, to the Bucs Planet podcast. And look, I'm just going to say it right now. A win is a win is a win. And it doesn't matter how you get them, as long as you get them. Because let me tell you guys something. The game on Sunday night was the biggest regular season game in the history of the sport. And it will go down as a Tampa Bay Buccaneers win. Not as a Patriots moral victory, not as a Bucs should have not as an anything. The only thing it's going down as is the Bucs won the biggest regular season game in NFL history. That's a big deal to this franchise, a huge deal to this crew right here. Big deal. Big deal. Obviously, there's a lot of concerns from this game. Now, honestly, the concerns were kind of the ones we already knew, so it's not really like that shocking. I mean, look, now, Carlton Davis goes down, Antoine Winfield goes down. The Bucs literally don't have their starting three corners now and their starting free safety. So, I mean, can you really just yell at the defense the whole time? I mean, it's just there's nobody there. It's all backups for the most part besides the linebacker and D-line. And I will say this, though. The defensive line looked a lot better than it did in the previous few games. Remember, 3 sacks in 3 games. Last year they had 11 sacks in 3 games, so to put that in perspective. But then last night, the Bucs recorded, I think, 4 sacks. It was 4 or 5 sacks, which is a lot more. That's more than all of our other games combined so far. So that's obviously huge. And I think a lot of that was due to Joe Tryon. Joe Tryon has looked so phenomenal, an absolute steal of the draft so far. He had 2 sacks in this game, and he just looked absolutely insane. He looked good in the Rams game, couldn't get home though, so it didn't really count. He looked great in the preseason, but that was preseason. This game, he actually got his first sack and got a second sack. Now, Vita Vea looked very good too, because what was he doing, guys? As educated members of society, he was bull rushing because that's all he can do and it's all he will ever do and always will ever be able to do. But that's fine if it works, right? Because then go up against the Rams, it doesn't work too well. But it worked tonight. So Vita Vea was very effective. Tryon had a really good sack when Vita Vea took up 2 blockers. Tryon stunted inside, had a clean shot on Mac Jones. Great hit, great sack overall. And he had another one that was a solid sack just by generating pressure off of I think a swim move. It was good. He's very good, very technically sound. He wasn't this technically sound in college, but you can tell that in his year off, because remember, opted out of the COVID year. He clearly worked on all of his techniques, his hands, his pass rushing moves, and it's a lot better now. And he would have been a top 10 draft pick if this was on display in college. For sure. So let's talk about Richard Sherman. Richard Sherman came into this game off of 3 days of practice, really 2.5. We literally signed him Wednesday. He not only played in the game on Sunday night, he started the game on Sunday night. And did he look good? No, he didn't. But does that matter? No, because he only had like 3 days to get ready. I mean, he's not really in football shape. You can run, and he was running, he was practicing his technique, he was doing all these things. Unless you play football, unless you're at the training camps and the mini camps and all these things that kind of get you in football shape for the season, you're just flat out not going to be in it. There's really no way around it. I mean, you look at some of these other guys that like Tim Tebow. Tim Tebow is jacked. Right? Muscles galore, but he's not in football shape. You put him in pads and you get him out there on the field, he looked completely discombobulated with the Jaguars, right? I mean, we all remember that. Richard Sherman is going to have to be able to have more time. He needs more time. I think, honestly, he said himself he needed at least a week to be at, where he wants to be at a competitive level. I think it'll be a little bit longer than a week. Hopefully it is a week, though, because, we're going to need him this weekend for sure. But I think for him to be at top form, he's going to need, honestly, a month, an entire month, I understand. And for Richard Sherman to sign on Wednesday and then immediately play in the game, was honestly kind of impressive by his standpoint because he could have protested that. He could have maybe not signed with us. He could have really done a lot of other things. And, he recovered a fumble. It's not like he didn't do anything successfully. I mean, he recovered a fumble. That's pretty good. The Antoine Winfield force. Antoine Winfield was probably the MVP of this game. He had an interception off of a Ross Cockrell tip. Ross Cockrell actually played really well and forced that fumble on a great hit. So Winfield has been a little so-so this season. Had a great game on Sunday. We're definitely going to miss him. Arians keeps alluding to the fact that he will not be moved off of the concussion protocol before the game this weekend. So that kind of hurts us. Obviously, as well as Carlton Davis being out 3 weeks, at least, I think is what they said, 2 to 3, I don't know. That's concerning, and it's annoying because it was an open field injury. It irritates me because it's like, it just seems so avoidable, but yet it still happened. It's annoying. Now, one of the things that I wanted to happen that didn't end up happening was trading for Patriots corner Stephon Gilmore. Now, I understand that the Bucs would have essentially had to move mountains around in the cap space to be able to afford him. But it sounds like he might have wanted to take a pay cut in order to win a championship. It sounded like that from when it came out the Patriots might cut him, right? But things kind of changed a little bit, and then it found out that, of course, not only did we not get him, he goes right to our division rivals, the Carolina Panthers. And I'm going to explain something to you guys. All right, I'm going to explain something that, a lot of you sometimes don't understand. Now, the Panthers are getting a lot of hype right now. Okay, they were 3-0, then they got let's not forget this, they got blown out over the weekend, blown out by the Cowboys, who, by the way, we beat the Cowboys. So, we beat the Cowboys. Cowboys just blew out the Panthers, and two out of the 3 Panthers wins were against the Texans and Jets. Those are 2 bye weeks. And speaking of the Jets, it was their first week. Zach Wilson's first game. Obviously, it's not going to go well. So, am I impressed with the Panthers? No, I'm not. And I'm kind of sick of it. Because I don't care that, honestly, I would be concerned if Stephon Gilmore went to the Saints, right? That's where I would be concerned. I wouldn't be concerned if he went to the Falcons or Panthers, and I'll tell you why. Because the Panthers aren't that good. And I don't know how many times I have to say it. The Panthers aren't that good. And, people keep saying, oh, well, they didn't have Christian McCaffrey. It's like, look, I don't care. Their defense has never been good. Really, honestly, it hasn't been good since Kuechly left, realistically. Their offense, Sam Darnold's looked okay. Sam Darnold's looked beatable to me. He's looked average. I'm not impressed. But guess what? Average is going to beat the Texans, and it's going to beat the Jets. And then the Saints, it kind of looks like they just imploded on themselves more so than the Panthers stuck it to them in that game. And then obviously, and then you look at the Saints too, because Panthers like, okay, well, we beat the Saints. Okay, well, Saints just lost to the 0 and whatever Giants, the winless Giants. Okay, that's embarrassing. That is embarrassing that you lost to the Giants, who are, again, Giants are in the worst division in the NFL, don't even have a win, and yet Saints lost to them at home in front of their own fans in overtime. So how good are the Saints? The Saints, to me, seem like a hit-or-miss team. They look like all pros against the Packers, which, again, I think was more of the Packers self-imploding than the Saints doing good. Go ahead and watch tape on that. And then, they beat, I don't know who they beat in week 2. Not a very good football team. I remember them not playing anybody good. But they beat that, whatever team that was, they look kind of decent. Wait, I think I'm mixing this up. Oh, no. So they blew out the Packers. Then they got stomped by the Panthers. And then they go out and beat the Patriots. Okay, and then they aren't very good. And then they lose to the Giants, who are significantly worse than the Patriots and significantly worse than probably most NFL teams. So how much of a quality win is that for the Panthers? Not very. I mean, I'm not impressed. I mean, it's the division. All those games are usually pretty close because you know your division opponents really well. So am I impressed? Not really. I'm not really impressed with the Carolina Panthers. So the fact that Gilmore is now on the Panthers, I kind of shrug. I'm like, Yeah, they got better. That's true. They did get better. But I'm like, okay, your record doesn't change. Like I don't think the record's going to change. The Panthers to me are just still the same old Panthers. And I haven't seen the significant improvement yet. At least to be a threat to us. People are like, "Oh, well, Will, aren't you worried about Panthers?" Like, no. No, let me tell you something. If we're losing to the Panthers, we have bigger problems than, oh, the Panthers are our biggest threat. No, because the actual threats of the NFC are the Cardinals, Rams, Packers, kind of the usual suspects. The Saints kind of exited themselves from that category. But if I'm sitting here worrying about the Panthers, we have way bigger problems because the Panthers aren't very good. Maybe they'll make the playoffs because they have the extra seed, but I don't think they will. I really now they have one of the easy schedules because the whole NFC South, our division pulled one of the easier schedules this year, coincidentally playing the AFC East and NFC East, which are both kind of probably the weakest divisions of each conference. So now you have to look at it and say, well, does it really matter? Now, again, I still think the Saints are better than the Panthers. But again, I guess time will tell on all of what I just said. That's just my opinion on that. I'm glad the defensive line actually listened to me. Clearly, they listen to my podcast. They know how it goes. And yeah, let me tell you, also listen to the podcast. Leonard Fournette decided to give it a listen because he had a very, very good game. 92 rushing yards, 50 receiving yards. That is what I like to see out of Leonard Fournette. It's funny, you hear those numbers, you're like, oh, the Bucs must have scored so much. Not really. And I'll tell you one thing, too. A lot of people are like, oh, well, you guys barely won. Your offense barely did anything. Well, first of all, I mean, the weather, it was on and off pouring the entire game. Not just on and off rain, on and off pouring the entire game. And the other thing was, too, is the Bucs had so many red zone trips. So many. I should have pulled up how many we had, but it was like, and we missed a 37-yard field goal. I was like, suck up, what are you doing? And then he was very clutch at the end, hit a 48-yarder, 41-yarder, right down the middle, loved it. But again, he missed that one, and it was, he goes down there, and we go to the red zone for the first 3 times. It was 2 field goals and a missed field goal. Then we score a touchdown. Then it was more, go to the red zone, and we just couldn't really get there. I mean, we went to the red zone, I think, at least 6 times, and we only scored 1 touchdown out of that. Obviously, that's not very good, but you have to look at it and say, well, we were moving the ball a lot better than the Patriots were. If we could have just cashed in a few more times, the score wouldn't have even been close. Even if we scored on only half those red zone possessions, we would have blown them out. So I think a lot of it was a little bit of nerves. Brady didn't look too comfortable in the first quarter. And by the way, Antonio Brown dropped a very, very bad pass that would have completely closed the game away from Brady. And it was really kind of annoying because I think he honestly should have had both of them. There was the first pass he lost in the lights. It landed out of bounds like a foot away from him. He should have had that one, just not good on that. And then he just flat out dropped the second one. That was perfectly right in the breadbasket in the end zone. So that's just kind of how that went. And, again, connect on some of those. Score sounds close. Now, I'm not saying, that shoulda, coulda, woulda. But I'm just saying that from an efficiency standpoint, from a yard standpoint, from how the game, what was on film, the Bucs dominated them offensively. They just didn't really cash in as much as they should have. The Bucs for sure deserve to win this game. They did more to beat the Patriots, it's true. And again, now the defense, look, you have, backups. There's a guy, number 29, never even heard of him before. We just signed him, comes up from the practice squad, starts the game, along with Richard Sherman, who hasn't played in a year. And, those are your starting 2 corners. Not going to go very well. It's just not. And then you have Ross Cockrell out there, too. So hopefully we can get Dean back for this week. I'm not really sure on the status of that. I'd probably have to get a little update on that. But, again, the defense looked not great against a not great offense. But, again, that's kind of what I'm expecting until everybody comes back healthy. I wish we could have traded for Gilmore, but didn't work out. Would have had to move mountains around anyways for that to be able to work from a salary cap standpoint. Now, one thing that was interesting, actually two things I found was interesting, is that the run game was good, but do you know who still wasn't good? Ronald Jones. And if you guys haven't picked up on this yet, like Bruce Arians has a self-proclaimed doghouse that many players kind of go in and out of, I also kind of have a doghouse. Let me tell you who's in it right now. And he's also in Bruce Arians' doghouse, and so is the other player I'm about to roast. Ronald Jones didn't do anything. Ronald Jones is my doghouse, and it was funny because even in he barely got on the field in that game. Now, was a lot of it because Leonard Fournette had the hot hand? Yes. But why did Leonard Fournette have the hot hand? Because he gets more looks, he gets more offensive snaps. You can look at the stats on that. Ronald Jones, and then it was funny because then even in the very few times he did get on the field, guess what he did? Guess what he did on one of the plays? Gave up a sack, as he should, as he does, as predicted. I mean, Donovan Smith, too, was getting absolutely beat up by Matt Judon. And Donovan Smith had one of his worst games in a while. Donovan Smith has looked a lot better as of recently. He had a great, kind of after the Bears game, the whole offensive line looked really good the rest of the season, including Donovan Smith. And Donovan Smith looked good. He's looked like a good left tackle up until, this game had a little bit of an off game. Judon kind of beat up on him a little bit. Just a little bit. And I think that kind of put more pressure on the running backs to actually pick up blocks, which Leonard Fournette did in a major way. I'm probably not going to show the film because it's just one play, but he had great pickups during the game. Great pickups in pass protection. And then, you take him out, you put Ronald Jones in, and he gives up a sack as he always does. And it's just like, is he ever going to get it? No, he's not. And this is probably why Ronald Jones won't be playing football here next year. And I want him to do well because Ronald Jones is more talented than Leonard Fournette is. Leonard Fournette just doesn't do dumb things as often, because he also does dumb things, but he doesn't do them as often as Ronald Jones does. And I'm just hoping that, I don't think Ronald Jones is ever going to get it at this point, but I'm hoping that he'll at least have a good game every now and then, hopefully in the playoffs. And that's kind of that. Another person in the doghouse that's been in probably Bruce Arians' doghouse longer than any player I can remember is O.J. Howard. You thought that because of Gronkowski not playing, you thought that O.J. Howard would get a lot more looks. Nada. I don't even think he had a single catch in the game. I'm going to have to look that up. O.J. Howard stats. I don't even think he had a catch. No, he didn't even have a catch in the game. I mean, do you know how embarrassing that is? That the starting tight end is out. So this means that you would think that O.J. Howard would then get promoted and get a lot more snaps, prove himself, say, hey, like I'm a first-round draft pick. I deserve to be a first-round draft pick. No, he did none of the above, decided to not catch a single pass, and didn't even really get on the field that much. So how concerning is it that even when Gronkowski was injured, that O.J. Howard still did nothing? Very concerning. O.J. Howard is also in a contract here, and he will most likely not be playing football here next year. I mean, they put in, I think, that tight end Cody McElroy instead. I have to look that up too. Cody McElroy stats. I mean, even Cody McElroy had a catch in this game. From the practice squad, came in, had more catches in the game than O.J. Howard did. That's not a good look. Clearly, O.J. Howard is the most athletically gifted tight end in this group. Now, if Gronk was 5 years younger, right, probably wouldn't be the case. But because of the fact that O.J. Howard is young and 6'6", he runs fast, he's just a great frame. He's the most athletically gifted tight end on this roster. There's no reason why he shouldn't be in the game always. It's the mental stuff. He's never been able to get it. He's always been average at blocking. He's never had good hands. He never is really. He's had fumble issues, drop issues, route run. He's often not on the same page. Understanding the playbook issues. There's just so many mental aspects of the game that O.J. Howard doesn't have, and the coaching staff is clearly fed up with it at this point. And honestly, I am too. If we receive a good trade, out. Oh, you want to give us like a third round pick for OJ? Out. That's my advice. I'm not saying you have to go out and try to trade him, but if there's even a slightly decent offer for OJ Howard, out. That's my advice. Well, that's pretty much going to do it for this episode. Now we have the Dolphins this weekend. Again, this is good because we have a backup quarterback playing, and one of the Dolphins receivers, Will Fuller, will not be playing, right? So now what do we have to look out for? Mike Gesicki, good tight end. Jalen Waddle, fast wide receiver. Devontae Parker, good wide receiver. So, again, I don't think the defense is going to look great. Hopefully Jamel Dean plays. That's still a little bit up in the air. Maybe 1% chance Winfield plays. Probably not. But Edwards, I think, could maybe kind of fill in a little bit. So, again, we're at home. Hopefully we need to win this one because if we can just kind of limp our way to the bye week, then hopefully all of our DBs will be healthy and ready to go. That's what we want. And so this is definitely a winnable game despite all the defensive issues, again, because the Dolphins have a backup quarterback. Now, make sure to watch the game on Sunday. I think it's at 1. And as always, go Bucs.